It actually feels like for most of the book it's just the same scene being repeated over and over again. Hello, I'm the Fantasy Bookworm, and this is today's book. It's The Coffin Trail by Martin Edwards, and unfortunately, this is one of the most disappointing books that I read last year. Martin Edwards is a British crime novelist, and The Coffin Trail is the first in a series of books called the Lake District Mysteries, which, as that name suggests, are set within the Lake District, and that's actually the main thing that appealed to me about this book and why I wanted to pick it up, because for those of you who don't know, I actually live in the Lake District, so it appealed to me, the novelty of reading a murder mystery story set around towns and locations which I've visited and am actually familiar with in real life. The problem is, the mystery itself just isn't very engaging. Basically, there was a woman who was brutally murdered many years in the past before the events of the novel, and there was an autistic character named Barry Gilpin, who everyone basically just assumed was responsible for the murder. However, he actually died very soon afterwards, and so he never faced justice, and there was never a trial, and so it became a cold case, and eventually everyone just kind of moved on and forgot about it. That is until the present day, when the protagonist, a TV historian named Daniel Kind, moves into the area, and he doesn't believe that Barry Gilpin could have been responsible for committing the murder, so he starts kind of investigating himself and nosing around looking for answers. And because this is how the book is structured, what you end up with is lots of scenes of people standing around talking to each other in the present day about things that happened long ago in the past. And because of that, it feels like there's no immediacy, no urgency, like things are moving forward in the present, and there's not a lot of tension. It actually feels like for most of the book it's just the same scene being repeated over and over again. Basically, Daniel Kind will approach one of the local residents and they'll strike up a conversation, and Daniel will bring up the subject of the murder, to which they will reply something like, "Oh yes, wasn't it a terrible, awful thing what Barry Gilpin did?" To which Daniel will reply, "But what if he was innocent, though?" And that scene basically just happens over and over again, and it gets very repetitive, and it goes on until near the end of the book, when eventually the real identity of the actual killer is revealed, which is admittedly a very good twist, but it's a shame it's just a bit of a slog to get there, or at least that's how it feels. I want to talk a bit more about the character of Barry Gilpin, because we do get a flashback right at the beginning of the book from inside his head, and then there are lots of scenes in the present day where characters are talking about him. And as an autistic person myself, I would say that he's maybe not the worst depiction of an autistic character in a book or in media of all time, but he does come across as a bit of a caricature. One of his autistic traits is that he has memorised all of the names and the heights of all of the peaks within the Lake District, and he recites them to himself in his head kind of as a way of staying calm. And okay, that is an autistic trait. I actually do something very similar to that myself, where if I am bored or stressed sometimes I might recite the titles of Doctor Who episodes to kind of calm myself down. So that is a thing that happens, but the thing is, I think the mistake that a lot of neurotypical people make, and I'm just assuming that Martin Edwards is a neurotypical person, I think the mistake a lot of neurotypical people make when writing autistic characters is they kind of forget to give them a character. The autism becomes a personality-defining trait, where that basically is their entire personality. I don't think we really get a sense of who Barry Gilpin is as a person outside of being autistic, and that's the problem. There's also the fact that because of his lack of social skills, Barry Gilpin behaves quite creepy towards women sometimes, and that's actually one of the main reasons why he's initially suspected of being the one to have committed the murder. And I don't really like the implication that being autistic makes someone be creepy towards women or excuses that behaviour in any sort of way. I think that's a very harmful notion to be spreading, and I do think it kind of comes across that way in the book. To be fair, he's far from the only one in the book who's been creepy towards women. In fact, all of the male characters are basically salivating at the sight of any woman who comes near them, pretty much, and any time there are characters together who are of the opposite gender, then there's always this underlying sexual tension in every scene, and that's something else that I'm really not a big fan of. For instance, the protagonist, Daniel Kind, he meets a cold case police detective named Hannah Scarlett, and they have a lot of scenes together in the book, and in all of them there's this dripping sexual tension between them. And this is despite the fact that both of these characters are established right at the beginning of the book to already be in committed monogamous relationships and already have partners. It's a trope in fiction which really irritates me because, for one thing, it's very heteronormative, but it also kind of implies that men and women are incapable of just being around each other and being friends or colleagues or working together or anything like that without there being something going on between them, which is just not a great idea to be promoting, I don't think, and it really does my head in. So that is The Coffin Trail by Martin Edwards. As I say, it's one of the more disappointing books that I've read recently, and unfortunately I've still yet to find a contemporary crime mystery novel which has really blown me away, or what I would consider to be a 5-star reading experience. So do let me know if you have any recommendations, and also let me know if you have read The Coffin Trail or any other works by the same author, and if so, what did you think of them? Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again here on this channel very soon.